Hi, Cupcakes. Lisa here. Wanting to dive in today to this wonderful tarot tag that K Cris has set up, the hashtag SBD, surrounded by decks, and this whole beautiful idea of um, trying to understand more deeply the meaning of tarot, one card at a time. So I may have to do this tag like 78 times. Um, Trying to understand more deeply the meaning of tarot by working with one card at a time across multiple decks. And I love how this tag positions us in relationship to the tarot, reminding us that the meaning that tarot enables through a reading, through the deep act of the shuffle, the meaning that tarot releases for us always takes us beyond what a single artist, a single image, a single human utterance is able to get at. That we use these cards to help us triangulate meaning across that which can't be spoken. Um, we get at the ineffable through our comparison and correlation and connection across the things that can be said, that can be put into words, into images. Okay, that's kind of heady, but what's really at stake for me is how the tarot in the different decks that have emerged over the years, how the tarot helps us get at something that no single human work of art can ever get at, but that collectively, together, we humans, over time, can uncover. So with that said, let me also say like this one point that I've been thinking more and more about lately, and I'll probably end up talking about this more in other videos, and that is my deep and uh, kind of deepening belief that there actually is only one tarot. You know, sometimes we talk about three tarot systems. We talk about Marseille, we talk about Rider-Waite-Smith, and we talk about Thoth or Thoth or Toth, however you like to pronounce that word. And sometimes we get more complicated and we say, well, before the Marseille, there was the Visconti Sforza. These are all manifestations, all evolutions of this one game that emerged in Italy in the mid 15th century. So, you know, there's one tarot, and it is interpreted by different cultures, by different communities over time in different ways. So, as I think about Surrounded by Decks and as I do my own explorations, I'm not going to be working with the Visconti Sforza right now, but I am going to be working across Marseille, Tote, which I'm still kind of getting my sea legs on, and Rider-Waite-Smith, and then decks like the Barbara Walker Tarot, which has elements of Tote and Rider-Waite-Smith and her own um, brilliance mixed in. There's one tarot, and it gets articulated across multiple decks. So I want to start with a card that I drew the other day, and it's a card that um, it's a card that like struck me as not so interesting in the Rider-Waite-Smith system, and something that I just never kind of got. I never really liked. I never resonated with, partly because I think Pixie's uh, um, imagery is just goofy, in my opinion. But when I encountered it in my first working with with the Wild Unknown, suddenly the Six of Cups made sense to me. So suddenly a card that is about the relationship to the past made sense to me and became meaningful. Like this deep root system that's full of color and life, and maybe the root system itself with its anchoring into the past, into our deep karma, into the world of, as Buddhists say, causes and conditions, especially the conditions, the soil out of which our present moment grows, how that's so vibrant in the Six of Cups and almost overpowers the tree itself. The roots are more vital and vibrant than the tree. So suddenly something about time and life made sense to me in this card. So this is where I want to start the SBD, is with the Six of Cups. Um, what is the Six of Cups? Now, in general, the Rider-Waite-Smith system, which is the system that I learned tarot on, like many of us. My light is going here. I'm gonna. Okay, I've adjusted the light. I think that's a little bit better. Um, so I want to begin as I explore this and explore the interrelationship between different decks and think about how the Marseille tarot and the Tote tarot relate to the Rider-Waite-Smith. But I want to start in the way that I think we need to, if we want to try to explore the deep meanings of cards and we want to think across decks, then we also need to think about the system, the 78 cards themselves, as comprising a unified whole. That when, that this is a language of 78 words, 78 terms, and that when a given artist, Waite or Pixie, take up that system, it's like, translating from French to English. It isn't the whole language system is translated. We have to treat the whole of tarot. It's not just one card at a time. There's a whole conception. The Wild Unknown has a whole idiolect, a whole language that informs every single card. That's why when you look at a deck, you get a sense that the deck has a voice, right? And decks, I think, decks are better or less effective decks insofar as they do kind of tackle the system of tarot as a whole, right? Not just one card at a time, but when there's a perspective that kind of unites the whole deck. So keeping that in mind, if I want to think about the Six of Cups, I need to think about the Six of Cups in relationship to the Suit of Cups, and the Suit of Cups in relationship to the other four suits, including the trumps. So let's just think for a minute. I don't, want to belabor this, but and here I'm looking at the premium AGM's Tarot von Waite. So the title is in German. But if I think about the cups, I think about the suit of water, right? And I think about the ways in which this suit begins with a sense of free-flowing abundance. Free-flowing abundance which finds its level. Water fills the vessels and kind of finds its level, flowing down from the heavens, flowing down from divinity, flowing down from the Holy Spirit, soaking into the whole earth. In a Buddhist sense, we talk about like the Dharma rain, the rain of truth that all plants soak up and grow. So the whole world is suffused with this abundance of truth, an abundance that we associate with the heart, with emotion, with the spirit, right? So the suit of cups then, is telling us what happens to that world of abundance. And it shows us, first of all, the kind of splitting into a partnership, a dyad that has its own sense of completeness. It shows us community. And then it starts to show us how abundance turns into a sense of loss. So how there's an element through craving and grasping, perhaps, through just the force of humans situated in time, where we say, oh yeah, okay, so this celebration is all very well and good, but what comes next? What will come after? And so this image, again, the light is kind of terrible here. This image, right? Sorry, I'm filming at the end of the day, so the light keeps fading away, which is itself a sort of metaphor, actually, for the journey of spirit in the cups, like this fear that things are fading away. So you've got this image here where have the figure disappointed, not satisfied, even though he's in the realm of abundance, even though, I think as Waite puts it, the fairy enchantments are offered to him. And he has these 3 cups in front of him. There's still this sense of, it's not enough. And then this sense of regret of now there being a past, of water, of abundance, even though there's this flowing river, right? Even though there's this free flowing living abundance in the background, nonetheless, the focus here is on what has been spilled, what has been lost. And that sense of loss then taking us into the past, into this image, which I've always just kind of despised, because pixies pixies' don't look like children. They look like little stunted dwarf adults. But actually, I think that might be because her artwork isn't so great, but it also has a kind of intentionality to it. From the standpoint of adulthood, we project backwards into the past, right? And so children are kind of little mini versions of us, right? This, remembrance of past plenty, which is the kind of place that the mind goes in the wake of loss and regret, which then can move into the present moment in the sense of fantasy and choice, but not necessarily realistic choice, which then can take its own path into a sense of, renunciation, of I am not going to find fulfillment in this moment, in this time, in this land, in this present place. I have to turn my back and move on. I always think of the Eight of Cups as the card of the renunciant, the card of the monk, right? Who's turning away from an identification with spiritual, an identification with the pleasures that are available in human time and space, and is off to find a different kind of pleasure. Now for me, and I haven't quite figured this out, so then how do we get to the Nine of Cups? How does the movement of cups take us to this sense of contentment, this sense of personal satisfaction? This doesn't seem like a card of the spirit, but somehow, the cups are showing us the ways in which we can find our way toward a sense of satiety, of completeness, of satisfaction, of contentment, and that ability to find that joy in our current moment, not in the past, in nostalgia, right? Not even necessarily in the union of romantic love, but in the self, in my own contentment with this body, heart, and mind. That ability to find contentment in this life, in the here and now, seems to be the precondition for this moment of covenant and complete communal, in that happiness that goes beyond personal contentment. And I think of covenant because I'm thinking about the rainbow as the sign of God's covenant with man, in the kind of Judeo-Christian sense. So here it's, in this world, in this life, finding the manifestation of the abundance of spirit. That to me is the journey of the cups, right? And so Six of Cups are kind of smack dab in the middle, where what we're trying to grapple with is the reality of time, the reality of loss, and we grapple with it through nostalgia, through idealization. Okay, so that I think is the journey of the cups as A.E. Waite understands it. If we go back to the sort of origin with the Marseille, what's interesting to me is the way in which this is a card that shows us what looks at first like perfect symmetry, perfect reflection, perfect marrying together of two sides, and then this kind of spine in the middle that unites or that emerges from that symmetry. But actually, if we look carefully at the spine, we'll notice that there isn't symmetry, and that in fact there's an up and there's a down, right? Well, there is that with the cups anyway. That the bottom is different from the top, right? That the symmetry isn't complete. This, just visually, this reminds me of the way in which the six, as depicted by Kim Kranz, also shows us a symmetry that is not a symmetry. That there's a profound difference in the world of reflection. If we think about the way in which the suit of water is all about reflection, and the six is, trying to think through how that reflection works. If you come back to what we learned from A.E. Waite about the journey of the cups, and about the tarot itself, as how are the heavens connected to the earth? How is God or the divine or spirit? How does it manifest in this world? The suit of cups, as interpreted as through the element of water, through the fluid that flows into cups, that fills these vessels, is a suit that's all about reflection, right? And here the reflection is not perfect. The reflection looks perfect, but it's not perfect. And indeed, as I was saying, in the relationship to the way the journey of the cups, the trajectory of the suit of cups is portrayed by the Rider Waite Smith deck, reflection is really a deep word, right? The whole nostalgia of the six is about a kind of reflection. This reflection on my own life, this reflection on the past. So that's depicted in the six. It's depicted by readings that articulate the relationship of the tarot to Kabbalah and to the 10 Sfirot, which articulate in Kabbalah the ways in which the divine is manifest in the world of the finite. So I love what Hodorowski says about the sixes. Oh, can I find the page? I had it just a minute ago. Here we go. He says in the Kabbalah, 6 is considered to represent beauty. In the tree of life, right, the Sfirot, under the name of Tiferet, it is at the center of the 10 Sefirot. If human beings are incapable of attaining the unknowable truth, that completely ineffable core of meaning, if human beings are incapable of attaining the unknowable truth, they can at least reach its essential radiance, beauty. Now, Hodorowski offers a way of reading the minors through what we know about the majors, and he carves out from the 22 major trumps, he carves out the Fool on the one hand and the World on the other, and so then he has 20, and he talks about the first decade and the second decade. So when he looks at the minors, he says, look, okay, so the 6 relates to, on the one hand, the number 6 and the lover, and on the other hand, it relates to number 16, the tower. And he reminds us of the ways in which the lover is about how beauty becomes manifest in our world through the sacrament of marriage, through that kind of choice that's at the heart of romantic union. He also, in thinking, he has a really interesting reading of the Tower, where he talks about the relationship. He talks about the ways in which the Tower, right, shows a kind of splitting open, a kind of sparking forth of the divine. He reminds us that the Tower's name in the Marseille tradition is often thought to be, la Maison Dieu, the house of God. He has a lot to say about the Tower, and that's for another reading. But he, in connecting the 6 to the house of God, the Tower, he talks about the figures tumbling forth as kind of filled with divine ecstasy. And again, it being a moment that shows us what it's like for the human, for humans to grab onto, to reach, to embody the sacred. And beauty is one place that happens. Okay, so what does anything of this have to do with the 6 of Cups? Well, again, this is a card that's about reflection and about how we embody in our own lives, um, how we embody um, that which really matters, right? How we embody spirit, how we embody um, the abundance of the sacred. In the tote system, the Six of Cups is titled pleasure, but it's not just a sensuous pleasure. It also, for Crowley, um, is attributed to Tiferet, to the Kabbalah. This Sephira is, in some respects, the most important of all. It is the center of the whole system. It is the only Sephira below the abyss which communicates directly with Keter, with with the divine. So, so he says, the Six of Cups is called pleasure. This pleasure is a kind of pleasure which is completely harmonized. The zodiacal sign governing the card being Scorpio, pleasure is here noted in its most convenient soil. This is preeminently a fertile card. It is one of the best in the pack. So this is a good card for Crowley. How this connects to, this is, I think, through this question of how human beings who live in time, who live in space, who live in a world of loss, how we nonetheless grab hold of the divine, how we find and harmonize the divine in our lives. Okay, that's a lot of stuff. I just talked about a lot of stuff, and I'm again losing light. Here's the light. Okay. Wow. So the other cards I have to look at here are all really more in the Rider-Waite system. So this kind of descent of the divine into the human through the free-flowing abundance of spirit that we see in pleasure and in the kind of perfection and symmetry, which nonetheless isn't quite symmetrical, of the Mousset. In the other cards I have to look at the element of time and how we work with time and memory rises to the fore. So here we have the Six of Cups in Tarot of the Hidden Realm. So the Fae here is immersed in this water, which is the water of memory, the water of our own minds as we reflect upon, hold, embody, summon up the past. So how do we gracefully navigate these waters of our own relationship to time, of our own relationship to a past? In the Anna K Tarot, this is a card I truly don't like. I don't like her interpretation, but I think it's worth noting. So she talks about the Six of Cups as a kind of idealized relationship to love. She talks about it in terms of puppy love, of this, hyper romanticized notion of love that's never real, that's being in love with a dream. So it's a connection to that which is idealized and not present. So it's also about a relationship to our it's also about a connection to meaning, to truth, to beauty that isn't fully skillful, right? It's not real. So that's Anna K. I'm totally enamored. I think this is a beautiful photograph. So this is Invisible Light Tarot, so Brandy Eve Allen's tarot. And let me see if I can get... So it's a kind of beautiful, the prismatic, the light coming onto this body. What her guidebook says is, let your past move forward. Don't get caught up in it. Experiences have made you knowledgeable, but do not define you. Remember the times you've been happy. You were probably present. Be here now. So the kind of prismatic reflections that are so beautiful, right? There's a sense in which we need to let go of that rainbow play of light, and just be in the present. Just be in the light without this kind of refraction and reflection, not getting lost in our past. Um, the Tarot of Delphi. The Tarot of Delphi. One of the things that the that is active for Hildegard Hinkel here is this way in which our relationship to the past is filtered. So she's noting this kind of beckoning of the adult figure in the foreground toward um, the children in the background, and how they sort of seem tentative and separated from her. In the way that, like, what's in the past is gone, is not accessible. She says a woman pauses from household chores to entertain two visitors. They look honestly they look honestly amused, yet uncomfortable, as if they're deliberately keeping the marble pool between them. Everything we see is through a filter. Childhood is especially full of impressions. Before we can walk or speak, our experiences teach us to have certain expectations. Even innocent memories are full of constructed social boundaries and instructions. Full of constructed social boundaries and instructions. So it's like this, you never have direct access to anything. A little bit like this idea of, from Brandy E. Vallen's Invisible Light Tarot deck, um, the importance of being present. I like that reading of the Six of Cups, but to me, really, the whole point is that we humans are not simply present. We're always kind of stretching out across time and space and trying to, like, hold all meaning together. We're finite, but we have big brains that allow us to try to grapple with the infinite. And in doing so, we encounter a sense of loss. Inevitably, we encounter emotions like regret and remorse, that kind of Five of Cup type emotion. And we occasionally find a moment where we need to turn away from everything that we've experienced in that kind of Eight of Cups renunciation mode. Barbara Walker's Six of Cups is fascinating. So she talks about childhood as this time when, like, it's where you live in the world of giants. So she's really drawn toward this card as being the card of childhood. And she says, for her, this is a card that evokes this key feature of a golden age where we live among giants. So she says, in the philosophies of antiquity, endings usually implied a return to origins where a new beginning could be made. The Tarot's Six of Cups suggested a psychic return of this kind, reverting to childhood memories either as a nostalgic inner pilgrimage or as a new light shed on the events of life's yesteryears. Mythology presented this idea as a return to the primal age of giants, or golden age, which the collective human mind projected onto its past. Giants appeared in such myths because the universal experience of childhood is that of living among people much bigger than oneself. So for her, this is a card of, like, this imagined golden age. It's kind of like Anna Kay's idealized puppy love, but it's not a negative for Barbara Walker. For Barbara Walker, the six follows the failure of love that we see in the five, that kind of remorse and regret, and it. She says it tended to suggest a psychic return to early experiences of love and faded memories of the deep past, just as longings for the lost golden age or pre-civilization could be mythologized as nostalgia for primal paradise under the giant's rule. So it's this kind of invention of a golden past, which is a natural psychic consequence of the ways in which we find disappointment in our connections to others and to the world. I think this image is super intense and creepy. To me, this golden age is not, I mean, she talks about it in positive terms, but to me the golden age here is terrifying. I mean, this I think the image belies her words, and I would say that this is an image of a kind of terror where we live as children in the presence of these giants who can, rip us apart with those. I mean, look at those hands, those claws. um, in my own reading of Barbara Walker's image of childhood, what I find in the Six of Cups is not anything that keeps us in the nostalgia, but in fact a recognition that the nostalgia is not serving us well. That the nostalgia itself, this turning back to the land of giants, to a kind of golden age, is actually um, is actually filled with danger and terror. I don't know what to do with that, but that's what the image says to me. It seems to be a quite shadowy card. Okay, one last thing, and I think I'll end here. In my last video, I talked about the Shakespeare Tarot, and I've only begun to dive into this incredibly complex and, I mean, insanely complex deck, and I didn't really do it justice. I kind of was a little glib in it. I mean, Chris Leach, this is the companion book. I mean, see what I mean? Like, the companion book is huge. He really knows Shakespeare's oeuvre. He knows the work. And the cards are illegible because in his tarot deck, he's trying to encompass all of the meaning that's carried in the entirety of Shakespeare's work. And he's trying to hold that like a mandala of Shakespeare in his cards. So each suit is associated with a different genre of Shakespeare, or kind of what he calls, I think, a modal, I can't remember, modal something of Shakespeare. So he associates the cups with the pastoral, which is super interesting. So the pastoral is poetry that's like about this simplistic golden age, not this terrifying golden age, but the simplistic pastoral poems tend to have like lots of shepherds in them, and it's like living in a world where everything was simple and lovely, and all you had to do is take care of your sheep. If you think about, if this is a reference that means anything to anyone, if you think about that 60s comedy called Green Acres, where it's like we left the city and we moved to the countryside, that fantasy of the countryside, of the simple life, that's the pastoral. And pastoral here comes from the notion of like the pastor, the shepherd with his flock. That's why it's called the pastoral mode. So there's a play of Shakespeare's called The Winter's Tale, and in it there's this whole pastoral kind of subplot and this character Perdita, and the Six of Cups is about Perdita, and her name means literally what is lost, and there's a whole complex, there's lots of stuff to say about The Winter's Tale and lots of stuff to say about Perdita, and to give him credit, Chris Leach says a lot of that stuff. What's really cool, though, is that, this really enacts this sense of a projected past that's ideal and perfect, and how in imagining that projected past, we can maybe heal the present moment. This is why I say that Barbara Walker's vision of the Golden Age has this positive, I mean, even though this is a terrifying image, it has this positive element to it, because she's talking about the ways in which, she's suggesting the ways in which that projection about the past allows us to make sense of the present, to heal the present. That there's something, it's not negative, like creating this nostalgic reality or grappling with this nostalgic reality. This is a largely positive way of dealing with human loss, with Perdita, right? Her name means lost, right? A way of us dealing with the loss that we all experience because we're temporal, time-bounded beings. The Six of Cups is about how we deal with that through nostalgia, through idealization, through reflection. There is no perfect symmetry in this world. There's no perfect reflection. All reflection is marked by the fact that we live in time and we experience death and loss. But art, poetry, the art of tarot, image, beauty, our attempts to grab onto beauty, these are all ways that we humans find to deal with the conundrum of living in a mortal body, having like big immortal souls, but living in a mortal frame. The spirit is abundant and it fills these vessels completely, but the vessels ultimately are really fragile. That's what the Six of Cups is about.